Brudnoy is the author of Life is Not a Rehearsal. It is a memoir published by Doubleday. Mr. Brudnoy is a talk show host at WBZ in Boston. He is a television commentator, film critic, newspaper essayist. Wrote a wonderful review of Katharine Graham's book in Sunday's Boston Globe that me and Chuck was reading yesterday. And he also teaches journalism at Boston University, and he has been kind enough to show up here. Good morning, Mr. Brudnoy.
Good morning to you, Mr. Imus. Tom.
How are you?
Great, thank you.
You look good.
Yeah, coming back from corpse-like existence a couple of years ago.
You know, I read somewhere that you studied Japanese at Yale.
Yeah, I was looking at the catalog of your brother's shirts and stuff. By the way, I'm wearing a company shirt here, BZ. Can I get one of your brother's things?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I see you're wearing it. Looks like good stuff. Fred doesn't have a WBZ shirt in his thing, but
I would like it. I would actually like it.
And stuff.
I would like a WBC shirt.
I will see to it that it gets here. Mr. Goldman will send you one. Ed, you're listening. Send one to the I-Man right now.
I would like one just the next time I go to Boston and appear on that loser station we're on.
So you can wear BZ shirts. Well, you're on a pleasant station, but it's not WBZ.
It's a hideous station we're on. Come on, let's be honest.
I'm being polite, Tom, but what can I say? They're airing me right now, tearing their hair in Boston. It's like, why is Brudnoy from BZ on that other place? Anyway, there it is. Hi, guys.
Didn't we have the general manager of that station, that moron called me?
McGuire, yeah.
McGuire.
Yes. That to get involved in programming over there.
Yeah. Wanted to discuss with me about something I'd said about something. Oh, it's just an absolute idiot.
Can we get a conference call going?
Before we talk about your... you guys be quiet. Before we talk about your book, where did you grow up and go to school and all that?
Minneapolis, Minnesota, and then I went off to Japan for a while as an exchange student. First American exchange student in Japan after the big war, WW2, the big one.
Why did you want to do that?
Well, I didn't. Well, I thought I'd be going to Norway or something. I studied Norwegian in high school, Minnesota. You ever see Fargo, you betcha. And they opened up Japan that year for the American Field Service.
Oh, I see.
Life magazine featured me naked in a bathtub. My life in the journals and being naked started as a kid. Then I went up to Yale, studied Japanese, went up to Harvard, studied Korean, Japanese, Chinese and stuff, and taught at a Negro college in Houston for a couple of years in the mid-'60s. Came back and took a doctorate in American history and fell into radio and television. All that Japanese for naught. You know how very infrequently you're called upon to speak in Japanese in Boston Talk Radio, Don? It's not exactly some major stuff in town.
Today is the Chinese New Year, 4695, the year of Oprah or the ox.
That's lovely.
Is it also the Japanese New Year or not?
Yeah. Well, they use the same schedule, but the Japanese are much more with the Western thing. But they use the 12 animals, sort of the year of the Ebonics. I don't know what the year of the muskrat or whatever it is. But I'm in the dragon year. What are you? How old are you?
I'm 56.
Me too. Exactly.
Except in the Chase calendar of events, coming up in July, it will suggest that I am 49, because you can tell them anything, and they don't ask you. So I did an interview with Tim Russell yesterday, my friend.
I heard, yeah. Tubby you call him. That's unkind of you, then.
Well, but
what are you going to call me when I'm gone? Thin guy, right?
Thin guy. No, that's right.
Man. I don't know.
Slender. Anyway, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about how you're going to be 49 and so on.
Oh, yeah, and he said, well, how could you lie like this? And I said, easily.
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem at all. I've no problem with that.
What you do is you tell people you're older than you are, and then they say you look good for it. I was telling people I was 20 years older than I was. Then when I fell ill, and everybody on Earth knew exactly my age, probably the length of every appendage, it became embarrassing because I could no longer say I was 74 when I was actually only 54 at that time.
Well, you say you fell into radio. I mean, how did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you. You want to know?
Yeah.
I was kind of half teaching, finishing a doctorate, and a friend said, WGBH television, the public station, is looking for a token conservative. They're getting a lot of... Can you say the S word on your station?
No, I don't think so.
Getting a lot of that stuff from Spiro Agnew, liberal media. This is 1971. So they hired a token conservative to talk on Channel 2 WGBH television. That led into an invitation to work on the then CBS affiliate, which is now the NBC affiliate, in television. And that led into radio. And before you knew it, I was teaching less, doing stuff at Harvard, and doing a lot of TV and a lot of radio. And you love it, I love it.
Are you a conservative or a libertarian?
I'm more a libertarian, but
what is a libertarian?
Libertarians believe that the central unit of society is the individual, and that people should be able to do exactly as they want, as long as they don't aggress against others. It doesn't mean that we don't have to have responsibility for our lives. In other words, you shouldn't be told by the government whom you can hire, whom you can fire, what you can smoke, what movies you can go to, what you can read, and so on. But you can't then say to the government, oh, by the way, I made a terrible mistake, take care of me. In other words, responsibility comes along with it as well. But, the grand cosmic scheme of things, I'm on the rightward side of the spectrum, so conservative doesn't bother me as a term, nor libertarian. But a lot of liberals don't know the difference. They think we're libertines. And since you've read enough of Life Is Not a Rehearsal to know, I did have my libertine decade in there. You had drugs in your life, Don, as I recall.
Man, I did. I was a serious drug abuser.
Me too. What was your decade?
Well, I did a lot of acid in the late 60s and then a lot of cocaine in the 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, I did the acid stuff, mescaline, LSD in the 1970s. I wonder sometimes why we're both here.
Well, by the grace of God, that's why we're here.
Thank you. I knew it was something. You'd agree with that.
I would indeed.
Absolutely. It's amazing how we get through that sort of stuff, and then we're still here at 56, alive, and trying to lead better lives. One of the reasons I wrote the book was to say, look, I made so many damn mistakes as a young guy, so much foolishness, so much denial when I got really ill with what I knew upstairs was AIDS, but I didn't want to face it, that I'm trying to do it better this time around. People say, well, the drug stuff, how did you survive it? I said, I don't know. There's one time I was walking on the ledge of a building. I've got severe acrophobia, and I don't like step ladders. I don't mind planes or skyscrapers, but don't give me ledges. I was at a faculty party with some students and faculty members when I was teaching, working on my doctorate in 1971 or so, got up on the ledge on the 6th floor of a building and walking around. My friends are screaming at me, get down, get down. And I'm saying, nature will protect me. I had a party there. My chairman, my old chairman from Northeastern, he's not old, my chairman from Northeastern said, David, I still get shudders when I think of it. I do not know how I am alive to this day, Don. And sometimes I'm reading enough about you to know that you probably look in the mirror every once in a while and say, gee willikers, how come?
Yeah, some weird stuff. 21 till the hour here in the Irish Winning Program. We're talking with David Brednoy. His book, Life Is Not a Rehearsal, is published by Doubleday, and it is available everywhere. And it is almost like Catherine Graham's book in a sense, and then it's an unnecessarily, extraordinarily frank account of Mr. Brednoy's life. When did you discover, or is that the right word, that you were a homosexual?
Is that what it is?
I don't know. Did you?
An epiphany.
Did you wake up one morning and say, hey, I got an idea?
No, I'll tell you, you always kind of know as a child something's going on. I remember an incident. I was in 6th grade, and there was a 5th grade boy. And, 6th graders are big guys. They don't talk to little 5th graders. Mm-hmm. This kid was exquisite. I couldn't take my eyes off him. I never talked to him, never knew his name, because he was 9 and I was 10, and you don't talk with little children then. And I said, there's something about this. And all throughout my teenage years, I went out, I had girlfriends, I like girls, I still adore women, but there's something going on. I thought, gee, I want to be like the swim team. I want to be like them, I want to be like the wrestlers. I go to the wrestling matches in high school and the swimming matches. I want to be like them. And it took the longest time.
I don't understand that.
Well, instead of saying, I want to be with them, I want to touch them, which is what you want to do. You say to yourself when you're not sure, I want to be like them. I'm admiring them.
Okay.
And they are, for me, an emulatable entity. Finally, by the middle of my college years, I finally said, I got to do something about this. When I was 17 and was in San Antonio, Texas, while my dad was there on military duty, for the reserves, I decided I wanted to get to lose my virginity, and I called up a cab company and went and said, take me to a woman. So I lost my virginity at age 17, and that was okay. I was scared out of my wits, but I did it, and that didn't do anything for me. It was an event.
Yeah.
It was like, making bookends in wood shop. It was an event. But I knew there was something else. I go to an all-male college down at Yale. There's 1,000 boys in my class. There's 4,000 boys. There's no women at all. And I'm sitting around drooling. And I mean, let's be frank about it. You can't, after a certain age, kid yourself that all you want to do is be like these people. And one day, when I was a junior, right near the end of my year, I met a sophomore. Next year, we found we lived in the same dormitory. He works now for a major newspaper as a major critic, and we started an affair that none of our roommates and friends knew about. We had to wait till all of our roommates were gone so we could just sit in a room holding hands listening to Odetta records. You remember Odetta? You remember
sure.
Odetta?
I think I do.
I loved Odetta. I still love Odetta. And I mean, this was the kind of it. I fell in love. And, Then it began, but how do you cohere at Yale in a sort of, we didn't even use the word gay or homosexual, we used the term comme ça.
What year was it now?
1961, 62.
Oh, wow.
I was 21 years old before I did anything with a guy ever.
Let me ask you a personal question. Who do you find more attractive, me or Chuck?
Bernie, actually.
I'm just kidding.
I wanted to tell you something. They told me that Bernie is actually on pictures in bathrooms in various gay bars. He is, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
I understand now the sort of mock homophobia. It's reaction formation. I want to meet Bernie, because people said for a good time, call Bernie.
Bernie is...
Where is Bernie now?
He's right in there.
Bernie.
And he's very cute.
A tremendously exciting guy. You are as good looking as they said you were. He liked the Stonewall. Remember the Stonewall bar? There's a picture of Bernie. This was before you had your program. He's now down at Julius.
Hello, darling. Imus in the morning.
Real Talk, WRTK.
We're talking with David Brudnoy, who is the author of Life is Not a Rehearsal, a memoir published by Doubleday and available at obviously bookstores everywhere, and has received some remarkable reviews around the country and endorsements by a number of people who appear on this show. When and how did you learn that you were HIV positive?
In 1988, I had a flu, and a doctor friend of mine, not my doctor, but a doctor friend, said, look, get an AIDS test. I said, nonsense. I don't do anything that would give me AIDS. And I didn't, I thought. And I don't, I thought. But I went, and lo and behold, there I was infected. And you were asking before about how you get it, and the book is quite clear about it. I make the point that the commonly assumed entry routes are anal sex, intravenous drug use with dirty needles, or blood transfusion. None of them were mine. What was it Sherlock Holmes said? When you've eliminated the impossible, whatever is left is, no matter how improbable, is it. So we come with only one other way to get it, and that must have been it. When I was infected, I don't know, because...
So when I said back in the office, you're not going to give this to me, that was probably inappropriate, wasn't it?
We just met.
Oh, okay.
We just met.
We were shaking hands, and
This is true.
I just sort of wondered.
It doesn't come through poems.
Oh, okay. So,
we could get into this, but this is a family show.
but you've talked to morons before, so this is not the first time.
Your ignorance is stunning.
No, I'll tell you, it's not. The interesting thing is people did not believe until recently that you could, in fact, get the contamination of HIV orally. And I as a matter of fact, wrote a piece in a gay paper. The gay papers think I'm not sufficiently gay for them, but that's because they're lunatics, basically, in gay lefty papers. The point of the matter is I said you can, and you do, and I did. And I put it into Life is Not a Rehearsal, not to be an exhibitionist, Don, but because I thought people ought to know how you do it. When you write a book like this, you don't get all namby-pamby and say, oh, by the way, the little sweet little guy gets a disease. How did it happen? So that's how I got it. But when I got it, I don't know. I know that my T-cell count was very low when I was infected.
So you don't know who you got it from?
No. I may have been infected in the early 80s, but 6 years of pretty good health from the time I knew I was infected to 1994 was followed then by a really bad series of symptoms that I reacted to in denial. In other words, I'm not a dumb guy, and I was doing good things and getting medications and, saying, when the time comes and I'm ill, I'll handle it. I had purple feet. My legs swelled up as if I was an athlete. I was falling into the bushes behind the WBZ building. I had to be carried up the stairs to go to my class at Boston University, and I kept saying, it's the flu, it's just the flu. And everybody said to me, David, you look like death. I was thin and drawn and miserable and vomiting and headachy. And finally, one day, I woke up, and I was in a hospital, and I'd spent 9 days in a coma. I didn't know where I was or how I'd gotten here. Turned out I collapsed in the lobby of my building. I was rushed to a hospital. A friend followed me to the hospital, said he's HIV positive, and they put something into me, and I learned later I had about 20 minutes to live. They said if your friend hadn't come and said he's HIV positive, they put in a drug called Bactrim, which dealt with my lungs. I had a pneumonia. I would have been dead. And third or fourth day in the hospital, Don, get this, doctor said, this boy is so sick, we think we ought to take him off of life support. They had me on about, 20 or 25 different intravenous things coming in and out of me. And my friend who had my medical proxy said, is there anything wrong with his brain? They said, not that we can tell. I said, well, if he isn't brain damaged, do we have to take him off these life supports? And they said, well, we don't have to, but the body is going through such torment. Now, you understand, I'm only told this. I don't know. Yeah. All I know is that when I woke up in the hospital, I didn't know where I was. And the first people I saw after one of my best friends was an uncle and aunt of mine from Minneapolis. And I said, am I in Minneapolis? How had I wound up in Minneapolis? They happened to be visiting the East, heard about my problem, came up to see their nephew. And what went on for the next 2 months, Don, was near agony. Shingles, pneumonia, paralysis. I was told I'd never walk again. Neurologist comes in at the dead of night, prods around with me, and I said, I'm not feeling anything in my feet. He said, yeah, and got one of those types. I said, doctor, I was like something out of King's Row. I said, where's the rest of me? Basically, I said, will I ever walk again? He said, I don't think you will. It's a wonderful thing. You tell a guy all alone in a hospital, he weighs 130 pounds, is nearly dead of AIDS, and tell you can't walk. I learned to walk again, but it took a lot of time, 6 months basically, on crutches and canes and so on. Came out of the hospital and finally started writing the book in the summer of '95 and said, I'll tell you, I'm going to live my second life a hell of a lot better than my first. This is going to be not mistake-free, but it's not going to be filled with denial, delusion, and all those other D things, delirium and so on.
We've got just a couple minutes here. Well, what happened? I mean, you're a conservative / libertarian talk show host, and presumably the audience is in concert with your views.
Not necessarily. They just love me because I'm adorable.
Well, okay. Well, that too.
They love you. They don't have to agree with it.
But what happened when you revealed all of this to your audience? What was their reaction?
Well, it was revealed in two ways. First, newspaper accounts in November of '95. Everything came out. It was obvious, and there was a media feeding frenzy, not unfriendly. I mean, it was almost like, God, one of our guys is nearly dead, and so on. Went back on the radio 3 months later, and my first night, January 5th of 1995, I just got on, talked for 1 hour, monologue. They put a studio in my house, so I'm surrounded by cameras and reporters and so on. I said, I want to tell you what's been happening with me. I'm a 54-year-old homosexual, and I was facing the first symptoms of HIV, of AIDS. Told the whole story. Following that, all told about 17,000 letters came to me. My producer, Kevin Myra, would bring it to me in the hospital, bags of mail. I called him Santa Kevin. Took the envelopes off of them. The first time he came, I said, where the hell are the envelopes? What do you mean? He said, David, if you ever try to answer these, you will die of the sheer labor of it. So, and 12, by the way, 12 letters, not 12,000, but 12 letters were hostile. I've gotten a couple, fag calls on the, but by and large, people have said, hey, you've been one of us for 23 years on television at that point, 19 years at that point on radio. You're part of our community. Everybody knew I was gay. This was not a secret in Boston, certainly. But the AIDS thing was suddenly, even one of our guys that we like, that we care about, some of us that love, can have this syndrome. And the support was, the point is, not everybody is as awful as we're sometimes led to believe. People aren't necessarily cruel about these things. Yeah. The fact that I was prayed for so many times amazed me. A friend of mine, a Catholic priest, visited me in one of the hospitals, the rehab hospital where I was being taught to walk again. And I said, Father Jimmy, I've gotten so many letters, prayer cards, masses for me. Do they count, even for an agnostic like me? He said, yes, they count, Bruds, but you've got to pay your own mortgage. So I've decided I'll take the prayers and I'll pay my own mortgage. I'm not a religious guy, Don, but I tell you, there's something was in the air, some kind of support from people, and I know that you understand this probably far better than I. Whatever it is, I'm eternally grateful for it.
What's the long-term prognosis, Jay?
We don't know. We're currently you've heard about the new AIDS cocktail methodology. This began in the middle of '96. I went from having a zillion HIV little modules in my blood down to no detectable amount. Wow. Gained 55 pounds. Stomach like a rock. I'll let you hit me later if it gets you off. And anyway, I'm teaching, I'm doing television, I'm doing radio, I'm writing, and I'm out talking about life. It's not a rehearsal. The one thing I have is still a deficit in energy. I need a nap every single day, or I'm whipped for the day. I have made a special voyage, a pilgrimage, a hajira to see you in New York. I hope you understand that you were a Mecca unto me, Mr. Imus.
I did think about that.
Yeah.
Well, some of the books that I did read, I told David I had read Kathleen Graham's book twice, and had skimmed his, but I'm not going to lie to him.
You can make up for it by talking about it for the next week or two when you finish it. The exam will be next Friday, Don, so watch it.
But some of it is very graphic. Why was that necessary?
It wasn't necessary, but I felt I did not want to write a book that was euphemistic. I didn't want to write one that was sort of prettifying things. I figured You tell the story, tell it truthfully. And also, Don, when I began Life is Not a Rehearsal, I thought it would be my last book because I wasn't on this methodology at that point. This is starting in the fall of 95. I thought I'll be dead in a year or so. I mean, this is what the trajectory was. And so I said, might as well put it out there without any form of cover-up, let everything happen, the good and the bad, and a lot of bad stuff, all done by me, by the way. I blame nobody for my life. I own to it, as they say in psychobabble. Now I think I'll live for a long while, and there I'm stuck with it. So it's all out there. It's okay. I mean, it's truthful, and nobody's ever going to say, boy, did he pretty up his life. Not at all.
Okay, how close are we to finding a cure for this?
I don't know. I created a fund, the Broadway AIDS Fund at the Mass General Hospital, to get $10 million for research. Contributions done are welcome. We know that the methodology currently working on the AIDS cocktail, hitting the AIDS virus from a variety of approaches, will probably lead to sustaining people's lives. The big deal is finding a vaccine for the third world. Without a vaccine, cheap, inexpensive, AIDS is going to be a scourge for decades more to come.
Thank you for taking the time to come down here.
Thank you for having me.
And you were charming. It was fun.
Thank you.
David Brudnoy, the book is Life is Not a Rehearsal, published by Doubleday, and it is a remarkable story of essentially survival.
1, 2, 3. Imus in the morning.
It's Real Talk with Imus in the morning. Weekdays from 6 till 10 a.m. on 1390 a.m. WRTK.
Hello, this is Gary Burbank, and it looks like Mr. Pitts has entered the BBC arena. And back to school time. So you were helping out? Yeah, we got to help out a little bit. So with the clothes and all of that stuff and the kids. Yep. Usually right-wing and Pitts off, then. This is Earl Pitts, Native American redneck. You know what makes me sick? You know what makes me so angry? I want to take a pair of Air Jordans and jam them up Mr. Michael's butt so far shoelaces come out his ears. I know my little boy Earl Jr. got me mistook for Mr. Earl Gut Rocks Pitts, but fact is I ain't no millionaire. But every time about this time of year, I got to bite the bullet, lay open the Pitts family fortune, also known as my wallet, and take my old lady and the kid back to school shopping. I'll tell you, this back-to-school shopping be a lot faster and less painful if a bunch of them Sears Roebuck guys just run out in the parking lot and mug you. Just throw you up against the hood of your car, frisk you for every last red cent to your name. That's it. Okay, you can go now. Let me tell you how it was when we was kids. Back-to-school shopping was 200 sheets of white notebook paper, couple of number 2 lead pencils, and if you was lucky, some new paste. Hell, this year, parents thinking maybe we ought to take a home equity loan out and get Earl Jr. some new tennis shoes. Then the kids got to get maybe 5 or 6 new pairs of jeans, and not your store brand neither. No, sir. Kids is smart today. They grab the most expensive pants they can find. I thought 501 was the name. Hell, that's how much it cost. You know, we ain't even talked about school supplies. Kids can't buy a pack of 5 for $1.29. He's got to buy a pen cost $4. It don't make his chicken scratching no easier to read neither. Then he's got to get this rocket scientist multi-subject educational organizer thing. Let's see again, back in my day, we used to call this a folder. But I found out if you call it a multi-subject educational organizer, well, you can charge about 5 times more. Wake up, America! My old lady Pearl gets all excited. She says, this year our little boy's going to hit 8th grade, primed and ready to do his best. And I said, Pearl, you said that 2 years ago when he hit 8th grade first time. It might not be smart, but it looks good. I'm Earl Pitts, Native American redneck. Pitts off.
You're listening to the BBC.
And our email address is
bbc@brugold.com.
BRUGOLD is Brugold. bbc@brugold.com. And, email. And letters, we even take letters. 1111 St. Gregory. Cincinnati, it's hard to say. So I'll say Mount Adams, Ohio. 45202. 1111 St. Gregory, Mount Adams, Ohio. 45202. And now with views to the right wing and Pitts off, this is Earl Pitts, Native American redneck. You know what makes me sick? You know what makes me so angry? I was born a French kiss Mother Teresa. Well, my old lady Pearl's birthday is coming up again. Let me ask you a question. Why on earth would anybody keep track of how old they was once they hit 21? I mean, once you're legal, it's pretty much downhill after that. I'll tell you what, my old lady, we can't fuss over her enough come her birthday. I can't even accidentally forget about it, because she start reminding me every dang day for about 3 months out. I figure I got to kiss up this woman maybe 5 times a year. Christmas, stupid stinking Valentine's Day, Mama's Day, our anniversary, and the big one, Pearl Pitt's Blow Out the Candles big birthday bash. We got to bring in every relative. Well, everyone she's still talking to, what's within a day's drive. And then maybe 15 to 20 of her Tupperware and Mary Kay Mafia connection. We all got to act excited. And she always acts surprised. Now, here's the worst part of this whole birthday shebang. Pearl is asking everybody the same stupid question. No matter how you answer, you can't win. Hey, Willard, how old do you think I am? Now, so you can't win that. If you play it safe and say, 23, well, she knows you ain't tried. Now, you get within a year or two of her actual age, she's going to pout the rest of the night thinking she's looking old. And may the good Lord help you if you guess older than she is. I mean, I've seen this woman turn over a picnic table in an age-guessing rage. Wake up, America! Just to keep everybody safe, I ran out one of them blinking portable signs for the front yard. This year it says, Lordy me, look who just turned 43. You see that sign? Come inside and guess 35, and you owe me. I'm Earl Pitts American, pay itself.
You're listening to the BBC.
Fred, know what happened to Prince today? Prince was supposed to be on the air right now.
I think he was a little intimidated by the topic.
The topic? Prince's topic today, cigars resurgence as parts of the good life. And if anybody knows about the good life, it would be the Prince of Labor. But, gee, it's terrible we couldn't find it. You know, I wonder if they had the same problem with Eric Severide. You know, if they had the same problem with other commentators, like Gory Vidal probably, you know, on a show, like, where's Gory? And you call him at home and he went out for a beer. But, Mr. Pitts is here, so we do have commentary. Earl Pitts, American.
You know what makes me sick? You know what makes me so angry? I just want to schedule my annual prostate exam with Dr. Edward Scissorhands. You know, sometimes I get the two mixed up. White House, Playboy Mansion. White House, Playboy Mansion. Playboy Mansion, White House. Hard to tell which one gets more sex, Hef or Willie. You see this one? It seemed like them legal beagle ambulance chasers for Paula Jones is trying to get this prevert story out of this White House secretary. Story goes, now this is a story so far, it's what we in the industry call alleged. See, this pretty young thing working in the White House says this other pretty young thing she's seen coming out of the Oval Office said she was in there and the president snuck up behind her and copped him a feel. We're talking little Oval Office tonsil hockey. The president hot for a little action, you know, a little executive action. Well, Paul and Joan legal beagles are all over this, wanting to prove how Bill Clinton's some kind of depraved knuckle-dragging animal. I think the whole thing this proves is he ain't getting enough at home. Now, you hear this story, and you think the same thing I am? We talking Pennsylvania Avenue or Melrose Place. Hell, you probably couldn't get away with a story like that on Melrose Place. People think it wasn't believable. Then we got all these mysterious deaths, so-called suicide going on. Man, I don't know if Bill Clinton needs to be on Meet the Press or X-Files. Wake up, America! This is the honest-to-goodness truth about Bill Clinton. Think about this. Go back 6 years. Admit it. You couldn't dream this guy up, could you? I'm Earl Pitts American. Pitts up.
You're listening to the BBC.
See your auto owner's agent
for insurance in a lump sum every 6 months or each year can be a hassle and a strain on your budget. With an auto owner's insurance flex bill plan, we can consolidate all your personal insurance premiums into one easy-to-handle monthly payment. With the flex bill plan from auto owners, we'll make sure you never feel the sting of an annual premium.
Auto owners, the no problem people.
See McCammon Hunt Insurance Agency, Canfield. And P.L. Gibson, Governor Agency, Vienna.
Trying to move in on a hit singer's territory, a Long Island, New York handyman arrested for moonlighting as 70s singer John Ford Coley, who had a hit with partner England Dan in 1976 with the song I'd Really Love to See You Tonight. Bruce Stelzer apparently sang it so well, he got 2 or 3 paying gigs. He could now get jail time if he's convicted for allegedly bouncing checks written while posing as Coley. The real John Ford Coley learned about the scam when a booking agent tipped him off. Says he was willing to let Stelzer slide until the checks started bouncing. Imus in the morning news time, 8 minutes after the hour.
Right Brain continues. Or have you even started?
Have you started?
Have you started?
And now, Imus in the morning 2020 sports. Here's Mark Green.
If Larry Loeb throws a strike, he'll win the match. Loeb picks up the ball. He places his fingers in the ball. And here he goes. It is long. It is straight. It's a strike. He rolled the strike. He rolled the strike.
Bowling history in Providence. Good morning. Mike Brain with sports. Steve Sparrow with the call on the Kegler's Radio Network. Larry Loeb and Jason Couch. Superb performances last night at the Pro Senior Double Championships in Rhode Island. And they'll be in tonight's finals, and that can be heard on WFAN in New York with all the play-by-play, starting with the pregame show, Bowling Today, at 7:35.
All right.
From boxing, Joe Frazier says he wants to extend the olive branch to Muhammad Ali. The two boxing rivals have had a very chilly relationship for years, mainly because Frazier could not forgive Ali for the vicious remarks he made prior to some of their fights, calling him an Uncle Tom and a gorilla.
Yep. You know, one time I made an appearance at Dick Gidron Ford, I remember it, out in the Bronx with Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier.
I recall it. I was there for that event myself.
Oh, okay.
I was accompanied the event.
It was me, Muhammad Ali, and Joe Frazier.
Can you imagine?
You can wrinkle up old skunk. Get out the way. I'm the star here.
At Dick Gidron's Ford dealership in the Bronx.
You scrawny little faggot, shut
up. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Quite a day. Quite a day.
And every judge on the take in the Bronx.
This big, huge sit-down. I mean, it was incredible.
It was absolutely like a mob sit-down with Dick Gidron.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Joe Frazier, you stupid yard ape.
And Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali.
Why don't you go pick some cotton? Uncle Tom.
That would be fine, Muhammad.
Well, Joe said yesterday it's time to end the feud.
That's pretty good, Bernard.
Shut up, you wrinkle up old jackass.
What do you mean, Bernard? That's the chant.
Way to go, champ.
Frazier's recent comments a far cry from his opening ceremonies comments after the Olympic Games when Smoking Joe said it would have been a good thing if he lit the torch and fell in. Joe said if I had the chance, I'd have pushed him in. But, feeling bad about some of his comments.
Oh, my God.
Gotta love Smoking Joe.
Smoking Joe Frazier.
Man. Smoking Ali.
Man, there was a guy who, before he started fighting, couldn't talk as well as Tommy Hearns. Man, I'm telling you.
From the NBA yesterday, they announced the 50 greatest players ever in the NBA. Mostly old-timers. There are some current players on the list. For the Celtics, 13 former Celtics are on it.
Oh.
Ironically, no current Celtics on the team, although A.C. Earl was very close to making it.
Is Len Bias on it?
No,
that boy doing?
No, Jack. Len Bias is not on it.
He got a good future ahead of him.
No, he doesn't have any future ahead of him. Jesus Christ.
How about that dude with AIDS?
No, he's not on it.
Give me some rubber gloves.
No.
Oh, it ain't what it used to be.
No, I know it's not. All right, here now, Media Watch, and today a richly deserved repudiation of a really stupid enterprise by the renowned veteran of broadcast journalism, Walter Cronkite.
Return with me now to Tuesday, September 3rd, 1996. A day like all days, filled with the events that alter and illuminate, and in this case, insult our lives. Yes, week one of the grand experiment is on the record. The shotgun wedding of Imus in the morning and MSNBC. Truly a marriage of inconvenience. Clearly, Sherry Rowlands wasn't the week's only whore, for we saw other individuals, all too willing to prostitute themselves for ill-considered, minimal, and surely fleeting gain. In a raw, reckless attempt to give his fledgling cable news enterprise a lowest common denominator kickstart, Andrew Lack, the heretofore respectable president of NBC News, joined hands with the nation's first jerk, the I-Man, said, "I do," and immediately laid down and waved his fanny in the air. Then, acting in concert with the ethically and grocery challenged David Borman, NBC executive producer, engaged Imus in an unholy electronic menage-a-trois. Well, we've seen quite enough in the judgment of this old hoary, wizened, and withered watcher of woe. Yes, there's no way to spin this one. It's time to face facts, cut losses, fold tents, and say, never again. We wondered, when rumors of the radio on television experiment first surfaced, what possible audience appeal such an arrangement might be able to generate. Now we know. None. For what did week one bring us? Basically, two diminished late middle-aged men, Imus and the psychotically sycophantic McCord, either looking at each other, utterly lost, or looking at newspapers in an excruciatingly painful effort to appear as though they were unaware of the camera's presence and deep in reflection on the day's events. Well, just pitiful. And this exercise, interspersed by the contemptibly inappropriate and unsought comments of the I-Man's producer, Bernard McGurk, employing terminal diseases and genital jokes in floundering attempts at humor, goaded on by the hyena-like reflex cackling of engineer Lou Rufino. Oh, to be sure, this cabal of miscreants sought to bring some degree of legitimacy to the undertaking by adding in-studio guests to the initial week's schedule. But who? Mike Wallace, who has one foot in the grave prepared for me, for God's sake. And during a period when headlines swirled around Dick Morris, booked the wrong political strategist, the hyper-bland Ed Rollins, who's never been leashed to anybody, so far as we can tell, with the possible exception of the governor of New Jersey, Christy Whitman. Although it's up in the air who would more appropriately play the dog's role in that relationship. And finally, Deborah Norville, a bright, comely young woman who nevertheless isn't even on somebody's D-list of guests somewhere. Well, no, the only thing to say in conclusion, in the view of this revered, feared, on occasion reared old reporter, is that the I-Man's neck isn't the only thing here that conjures up the image of a turkey. Mr. Lack, Mr. Borman, from one journalist to another, please stop the madness. For Media Watch, this is Walter Cronkite. Thank you and good night.
You don't like my jacket, Bernard?
You become a caricature of yourself.
Well,
you really,
Bernard
it's ridiculous.
Absolutely right.
It's New York City, and you're walking around with Jerry Spence jackets and cowboy hats.
Cowboys, and particularly with a cowboy hat. My wife tells me I look adorable.
You guys going line dancing tonight, dude?
See, that's where you don't get it, Bernie. It's not about building a bridge to the future. It's about building a tribe. And you're supposed to be part of...
Oh, God almighty. You're smoking those mushrooms.
You need some buckskin on that bald head. That's what
you leave Bernie alone.
You know what?
Feathers hanging out.
You leave Bernie alone.
You do a pretty good Jennifer Capriati impression. Where'd you learn how to do that?
That was fun.
If your radio sounds funny in the morning, you're listening to Imus in the morning.
Honey?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell them about the John Smith Pocahontas little game we play?
Little Indian game, eh? That's cute.
No, we don't play any kind of thing.
I'm smoking a little peace pipe there, man.
Imus in the morning.
It was entitled The Unkindest Cut, which was about his efforts to make this $7,000 movie, which, by his own admission, cost him about $50,000. He had a book prior to that called If You're Talking to Me, Your Career Must Be in Trouble, which was laugh out loud funny. Yes. And, Ron.
When I went to England to sell this last book, they said, we've got a window that you're sharing in Covent Garden, a bookstore in Covent Garden. So I went down there. You know who I was sharing the window with? Salman Rushdie. You're sharing a window with me, your career's in trouble. So I said, can you get me in a window with Danielle Steele or something, just for the hell of it?
Part of Joe's article in GQ magazine about immersing himself in mainstream pop culture included going to see Cats, which sucked, listening to Michael Bolton records and Garth Brooks and John Tesh, and also dining at Red Lobster, which I guess was not a pleasant experience.
No, when you said two words that spell nutrition, I knew you weren't talking about Red Lobster.
But guess what we just found out?
Yeah.
The voice of Red Lobster is our friend, and how fitting is this?
Perfect. It's perfect.
Pat O'Brien from CBS Sports.
Yep. Man, I hope he doesn't eat that
He
stuff.
is the single phoniest person ever. He's a nice guy, but he is the most transparent person, except for my agent.
Or Sammy Davis Jr.
Or Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah, who's
well,
gone.
We could talk all morning to you about this, about a lot of stuff, but let's talk about these TV shows. Which ones have you seen, and what do you think?
I'll tell you what. Yesterday, the Federal Express guy came to my office, and he says, what are you doing in there? The TV's on. I said, I'm watching TV. He goes, oh, man, some guy's got the life. I said, you know what? Let me tell you something, buddy. You go out and you deliver packages. I'll take your job for a day and deliver packages.
Steve, can you hear me?
Because you don't want to sit here all day watching Molly.
Did that fax come through okay?
You don't want to sit here watching Laurie Petty.
I just sent it.
You know what it's like to watch?
All right, call me. I don't have a number for you.
And there's Suddenly Susan, girl gets left at the altar. There's Life with Roger, guy gets left at the altar. There are 7 new shows about teachers. There's 2 shows on UPN that have exactly the same plot on opening night.
Give it to me again, would you?
Showing up for benefits. The shows are all interchangeable. I mean, the shows are just so bad that, the only thing good is the Laurie Petty thing. I don't know what function that woman serves.
What show is it?
It was called Lush Life. It was canceled yesterday. It was the first casualty, and it was another roommate show. And she, Laurie Petty is one of these people. She was in A League of Their Own. She had a small part, and then she was in this thing, Tank Girl. And every time I see her mentioned in the paper, because the media love her, they always go Laurie Petty of Tank Girl. And it's like, that's like Tom Hanks of Bonfire of the Vanities. Or like when Alec Baldwin comes on Letterman, they play the theme from The Shadow, so they play the theme music from Your Last Bomb. What is it? What's going on? Okay, so the sitcoms, Spin City. Michael J. Fox is good, so if the writing improves, it might get better, but this is a show about New York City and the mayor's a wasp. Hello? I mean, New York's like Baghdad, New York, the next mayor's going to be named like Rostovjani or something, and they've got a show. Like, does anybody from Hollywood ever come to New York? Have a look around?
Who's behind that show is Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was an aide to Mayor Lindsay. So maybe that's their,
Things have changed, Jeff. Okay, believe me. If you don't have like your, an avowal and your last name, you're not getting to be mayor. I mean, come on, drop in sometime and see what's happened. But that's probably it. Okay, so then.
How about the Brooke Shields thing, Susan? I saw that. I thought she was pretty good.
She's okay. The show's not great. I mean, they need better writers. But you know what I think makes that work is that Brooke Shields is achieved exactly the sort of success in the movies that Sybil Shepherd and Candice Bergen achieved, which is nothing, but they made a lot of movies, so they've got this kind of brand name recognition. Yeah. And Brooke Shields, I think people like seeing a really pretty girl make those stupid faces, which she's good at. Yeah. So I think that, maybe it could work, but the story itself is not great.
That's exactly what my wife said last night. She said it's the formula. They get some pretty girl, and they put them in one of these things, and they make stupid faces, and that's the basis of their show.
And all the girls look like Marsha Brady from the, they all look like Alicia Silverstone. Well, this is before she had Red Lobster a few too many times and bloomed up.
Yes, Joe.
The Cosby Show isn't bad. Yeah. The first episode wasn't good. They even admitted that the first episode wasn't good. But you know what's the most interesting thing about reviewing television is that the studios send you the shows, and frequently they don't have the laugh track mixed in, and you see exactly how funny these shows are. No. Because they have left the space for the laugh. So you're sitting there. I always watch these things with my kids, who are 12 and 9, and if they don't laugh, it's not funny. And we'll be sitting there watching these things, and they're like, "Where's the joke?"
What's your son was 10? He's 10 today, right?
He's a man. Yeah.
What's his name?
Gordon.
Happy birthday to Gordon.
Thank you very much.
All right, go ahead.
So, with Imus in the Morning Sports, Beach did indeed put all zeros up over 7 innings, and he got his first win in over a year. Ending a streak of 22 starts without a victory, Philadelphia blanked Colorado 5-0. Rockies left fielder Dante Bichette cleared waivers, lending speculation to a possible trade. Pittsburgh topped Atlanta 5-2. Houston humbled Florida 13-2. St. Louis beat New York 5-2. The Mets have now lost 4 straight. San Diego got by Montreal 6-4. And out in the West, San Francisco opened up a 2.5-game lead on L.A. The Giants beat Cincinnati 7-3, while the Dodgers lost to Chicago 4-2. Pitcher Mark Clark winning in his Cubs debut.
Definitely a good feeling to come over here and get started off on the right foot with a win. And I give up some hits on too many hits on 0-2 and 1-2 counts. But other than that, I spotted my fastball pretty well and felt pretty good out there.
Clark acquired last week from the Mets. In the American League, Baltimore got 3-hit pitching from Scott Erickson in an 8-0 thrashing of Oakland. Kansas City rallied to beat New York 6-4. Texas unleashed a 17-hit attack in a 12-2 crushing of Boston. Roger Clemens struck out 13 for Toronto. The Blue Jays over Minnesota 9-1. Cleveland topped Detroit 7-4, and Anaheim and Seattle remained deadlocked in the West. Angels lost to Milwaukee 5-3, while the Mariners lost to Milwaukee 5-3, while the Angels went down to Chicago 8-5. A sad note from baseball: Rex Barney passed away. He pitched a no-hitter for Brooklyn in 1948. And spent the last 23 years as the PA announcer in Baltimore. And it looks like the New York Rangers' bid to sign center Joe Sakic away from Colorado will fall short. Rangers made a 3-year, $21 million offer to the restricted free agent, but the Avalanche expected to announce they will match that offer. A press conference in Denver today at 1 o'clock Eastern. That's sports. I'm Joe Tollison.
The Auto Body Express is sponsored by Mohegan Sun, the world's greatest casino. Y'all call Fred this morning, 1-800-272-1957, and order one of each item in the catalog and tell him to put it on my credit card. The Auto Body Express, sponsored by Mohegan Sun.
Floating on the wind, amidst the barren sepia desolation of the dusty desert, there is a legend. The legend of a man who came out of the shadows to become champion of the people. The man we call Natamahotahe, many big balls. The man with 3 testicles. The man they call Tres Huevos. Tres Huevos! Not now. I'm trying to set a mood here. Sorry. In the small metaphorical town of Akarima, the sheriff, an immoral, cynical, opportunistic man, has ruled with an iron hand for the past 4 years. Now comes a peevish old gunslinger who has desperately wanted for many years to be the law of the town, to challenge the seemingly unbeatable sheriff. This morning, the sheriff rides out to a small adobe hogan on a nearby hillside, seeking the endorsement of the mysterious and powerful stranger who sits by the fire looking at a stack of daguerreotypes.
Hey, have you seen this? Look at this. I got this about 3 in the afternoon. Clouds are just rolled in, and I overexposed it about 2 stops, F11.
Senor Huevos, you helped me become sheriff 4 years ago, and aside from those few nasty things you said about me at that Grange meeting back in April, I'd like to think you'll back me this November.
Now check this out. This is the Notch Canyon. Look at the way the light's coming in through the rocks here, man.
Is that a yes or a no?
Later, the old gunslinger makes his pilgrimage to the home of our manly hero.
Sheriff's nothing but an outlaw. Billy the Kid robbed a bank before he came here. His wife, the school marm, stakes some shady claims out in gold country. Members of their posse are already in jail. So old gunslinger wants to make a change. No, he's got Tres Huevos support. Old gunslinger may only be able to draw with the left hand, but he's still pretty fast. A cigarette?
Why, have we had sex? Oh, I don't smoke.
Well, you should, you know. Smoke, I mean, makes you look distinguished. Old gunslinger would if he didn't have to hold this damn quill.
The townspeople are confused. Many of them are inclined to back the sheriff, yet some hunger for the change that would be brought by the old gunslinger. Suddenly, a cloud of dust appears on the horizon, and a stagecoach, driven by Tres Huevos, roars into town. All eyes fall upon the stage. Tres Huevos climbs down and opens the door for the man he wants to be sheriff of the town.
Jeez Louise, are there enough Mexicans around here? I was right about that giant sucking sound, and it's sucking all the damn Mexicans into this country.
A Texas snake oil salesman? Why him?
I may have 3, but he's more nuts than me.
Tres Huevos, out of the night comes a blinding sight. It's the man they call Tres Huevos. Tres
much better than you, for you only have two. The manly man they call Tres Huevos. Tres Huevos. The newspapers all love to quote him. Tres Huevos. The man with the extra large scrotum. Tres Huevos. Tres Huevos.
Save my soul, I can't get a date. My baby got a tour wide and big giant, coming through the TV, shooting up the land. My baby loves the western blues. My baby loves the western Imus in the morning.
The Unkindest Cut, which was his account of his efforts to make a movie for $7,000, and it wound up costing what, Joe? $100,000?
Cost about $50. But then when you throw in the cost of holding my own film festival and bribes and T-shirts, it came to about $65,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a complete disaster.
And he has a hilarious interview with
That's
Spike.
still more money than Spike Lee got to make his last movie. Spike's only getting about $40,000 to make movies now.
He has a hilarious interview with Spike Lee in the current issue of, in the October issue of their Movie Line magazine. Now, this particular cover has been banned, right?
Yeah, because the image is a bit risque, I suppose.
Okay.
Hasn't been banned in my house.
No, it's so I have a collector's item. And he also has an article in GQ magazine entitled "How Bad Can It Be?" And he samples the offerings of our popular culture and finds them essentially as awful as he hoped they would, and as you might imagine. And well, first of all, thanks for coming in. So
I got nothing else to do today. It's my son's birthday, though.
How old is he?
He's 10.
He was in your movie, wasn't he?
He was in my movie, but he quit.
Yeah.
He walked out about halfway through. You know, that's why I'm here. I mean, he's like, can you make breakfast for me Thursday morning? No, I'm doing Imus's show. Make breakfast for yourself.
In this interview with Spike Lee, I mean, did he realize that you were jerking him around, right?
You know, I went in there with, you know, this article sort of shows why celebrity journalism is a waste of time. Right. Because you've already made up your mind what you think of the person before you go in, because you've seen their movies. And it doesn't make any difference what they say about their movies. And I had made up my mind before I went in that I was going to write an article about how Spike Lee, the person, is an unbelievably annoying person, as we all know. Yeah. But when he makes a movie, the movies are completely different. The movies don't have all these, like, racist remarks that, you know, he tends to make. So I had 45 questions. They gave me an hour and a half. I had 45 questions. I was out of there in 45 minutes. Right. I mean, he is not, for a guy who can't shut up on the screen, yeah. He is not a talkative man. He doesn't have a whole lot to say.
Yes, but if you ask him questions, how come you don't make a movie about Sammy Davis Jr.? I mean, how is he supposed to... Did he think you were serious? Or?
He didn't like that question.
Well, no. Well, why would he like it?
Well, because, you know, the thing is, Sammy Davis Jr. is an interesting person because at one time, Sammy Davis Jr., I remember Leonard Feather once wrote that he was like the greatest jazz singer of all time. There was a time early in his career when people really respected and admired Sammy Davis Jr. before he became the unbelievably appalling person that we all knew him to be. Yeah. And I just thought it would make an interesting movie to do Sammy Davis Jr., especially, you know, with the mood rings and, you know, if this don't turn you on, you ain't got no switches and all that. You know, he was just the worst. I mean, I can remember David Susskind had a show one time. Yeah. David Susskind had a show, and he had a whole bunch of people on. I think Gore Vidal, Gay Talese, I don't know. He had like 5 people on, and it was about American pop culture. And at the end of it, he said, "Who is the most annoying person in America?" And they all said Sammy Davis Jr. Well, just like everybody now would say John Tesh. I mean, you wouldn't blink, you know? Geraldo Rivera might get some votes. So in any case, his attitude when I asked him that question was, will you make a movie about Sammy Davis Jr.? His attitude was, yes, I can, but no, I won't. And that was it.
That was the end of it. And, and he was not receptive to your suggestion about Dennis Rodman either.
No, I said, look, make a movie about Dennis Rodman, and he said you could make a movie that would be interesting for about 5 minutes about Dennis Rodman. Well, 5 minutes of interesting footage would be better than the last couple of Spike Lee movies. The one that he made, Crooklyn, about his family growing up in Brooklyn, and everything, that was like lethal, Hallmark Hall of Fame type stuff. So he said, no, you can't make a movie about Dennis Rodman because he's not an interesting enough person. And I figured, what does that mean? I mean, he seems interesting, I saw Dennis Rodman interviewed by RuPaul. And Dennis Rodman's a whole lot more interesting than RuPaul, and a whole lot more outrageous than RuPaul. And RuPaul is a drag queen. So think about it. And he said, no. So then I said, would you make a movie about H-Rap Brown, who, as you remember from the 1960s, was another person who was very popular with Caucasians? And he said, no, we're not going to. I don't want to make a movie about H-Rap Brown. And what I was sort of getting at was, part of what Spike Lee does is Spike Lee does things in a sort of calculated way to get under people's skin, and to get under white people's skin, for example. So what better way to do that than to make a movie about H-Rap Brown, who, white people really didn't like? Or what better way to do that than to make a movie about Sammy Davis Jr.? I mean, I really think Spike Lee should make the Sammy Davis Jr. movie.
But at least, if I read the article correctly, he was not receptive to any of these suggestions from you, and at one point wondered why you were making them, right?
You want to know something that happened? I went over, he's over in Fort Greene, he has this converted firehouse. So I went over there one day, and, I had tested the microphone. I haven't done interviews in a while because, who wants to be interviewed by me? So in any case, I went over, and I had the microphone, and I tested and everything, and I had the cassettes, and I had all my questions, and I watched all his movies, and I had all my notes. And when I went in there, I remembered the one thing that I forgot. I am the world's worst interviewer. I'm just a terrible interviewer because I'm not really interested in what any of these people have to say, So I'm just a terrible interviewer, and he is a terrible interviewee.
Yeah.
He is yes, no, monosyllabic answers. He is not like he's not like Sammy Davis Jr. He's not like a real happy guy. So he's a very, very hard guy to interview. And the thing is that I wanted to write this article saying, ignore this guy, ignore what he's like, ignore what he says. Like he's in the paper today saying that he's banning this one reporter, a black reporter, from seeing his movie because he hasn't been kind to Spike Lee in the past. So in any case, he does those sorts of things, but when he makes movies, I think some of the movies are okay. So it didn't matter to me. If he had hid me, I was still going to write the same article.
Well, why did this was an assignment then?
Well, yeah. Here's the way I think it happened.
So why did you do the interview?
Because Movie Line called me up and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I thought, that'll be interesting to interview Spike Lee. But then what happens was, I was telling all my friends, many of whom are white, that I'm going over to interview Spike Lee, and none of them cared. None of them cared. It was like, why? What are you doing that for? And I'm going, well, he's sort of an interesting guy, movie maker and everything. And they go, who cares? Yeah. Which sort of took me aback.
That would have been our attitude. Exactly.
Yeah. So in any case, I went over to interview him, and from his point of view, it looked to me like, he's making a $2 million movie. Okay, he made a movie, Get on the Bus, about the Million Man March. Okay, right. When you're making a $2 million movie, it's not because you want to make a $2 million movie. It's because Hollywood's pulled the plug. So it seemed to me that the studio had said, you have to talk to this guy, which is the premise of my book. If you're talking to me, your career must be in trouble, which couldn't possibly have been more accurate in this particular case. When I'm talking to the guy, one of my last questions was, are you going to be one of those guys who ends up making like car chase movies like everybody else? Okay. And he said, I hope not. Just 2 weeks ago, he signed to do a sitcom on television. And in his press conference, he said, I've made 2 movies and now I'm trying to broaden my horizons. Yeah, just like, Kirstie Alley's trying to broaden her horizons. Or Farrah Fawcett. I mean, you're doing TV because you can't get any money to make the Jackie Robinson story. And the thing is, if Spike would only get behind the Sammy Davis Jr. project, which I know you would help to fund, right? I mean, it's a project that a lot of us would like to see. Okay, if he would get behind that, that could get the public interested again.
Yeah, well, we're talking with Joe Queenan, whose article is in a current issue of GQ magazine entitled "How Bad Can It Be?" in which he Well, you immersed yourself in pop culture, right?
Yeah, I did.
You went to see Cats, for example.
Well, yeah. What I did basically was I was tired of being like a snob. Like all my New York friends are like, well, they read the New York Times, you know, and the New Yorker, and they go to mostly Mozart festivals. I figured, why don't I do things that all my life I've said I just don't want to go there. I don't want to eat at Red Lobster. Okay, I don't even want to know. And I just decided to spend about a month doing nothing but things that I had never done on the premise of, okay, it's going to suck. But how bad could it be?
Right.
So the first thing I wanted to do was to see Cats. And I had no idea. The whole thing, Cats to me, like I was walking past the theater for 14 years and I knew something was going on inside, but I didn't want to know. It was like those bars, Boots and Saddles in Greenwich Village. It's like something bad's going on inside. I don't want to know.
No,
but I didn't know that Cats was just like 100 guys who look like Kiss with whiskers, scampering around for 3 hours, meowing. Yeah. That's the entire program. I mean, I thought there was like a plot line or something. I went with my daughter, who was 12, and she was sitting there going, is there some purpose to this? Is there some reason that we're here? Is anything going to happen?
Well, how did the audience like it?
Well, okay. The show's been playing for 14 years, 5,397 performances. So for 5,397 nights, these people had something better to do with their time. So you can imagine what the audience is like. They're like, okay, what time is it? It's all tourists. It's all Japanese tourists. It's like, we'll go to Harlem. We'll see, Al D'Amato bust somebody. We'll go and to look at the Statue of Liberty, and we'll go to see Cats, and then we'll get the hell out of this town. Yeah. So it's just this sense of you're punching the clock. So then the next thing that I did was, okay, I said, I've known about Michael Bolton for a long time, but I never really listened closely to this stuff, so I bought the classics, okay, where he mutilates some of the greatest songs in the history of popular music. So I'm sitting there at night, I'm sitting there listening to him sing Sam Cooke's You Send Me, and Irving Berlin's White Christmas, and I'm figuring, why, if it's a federal offense to mutilate Mount Rushmore or to spray paint the Jefferson, monument, why isn't it a federal offense to wreck a Sam Cooke song? Like really, it's worse than burning the flag to wreck a great Sam Cooke song.
Well, what was most of